What do we do?
I don't know. This has never happened before.
Do we give it a push or I don't know? It seems a touch damaged.
A touch? A touch? This is catastrophic. This is a full-on Sunbreak. Ladies, gentlemen, and goddamn humans everywhere on the planet,
we are on Monster Hunter Red Alert. The expansion has been announced for Monster Hunter Rise, and I could not be more excited without inducing some sort of long-term health condition upon myself. I've not even seen the teaser yet. I just know that it exists, I know the name, and I know the logo, all in an attempt to stay as spoiler-free as possible for this experience. However, given that the subject of this teaser was, by our best guesses, the flagship of the game, it will be almost impossible for me to not learn at least a little bit about them. And Josh told me that this trailer gives away none of its fight either, so here's my immediate reaction to the teaser just because I can. Whoa, what's that? It's so fluffy. I'll go back. Look at it.
5 minutes later.
Oh, look at the castle. That's beautiful. Oh. Oh, is that oh my god. Holy, what is with those frills? Oh, those wings. Holy shit. I won't lie, when I first saw it, I sort of thought it looked like Yangaruga. But that thing is gorgeous. And we're in a castle? Look, okay, I am really goddamn excited about this. Stop judging my love of small fluffy animals. But that excitement exclusively is not today's focus. It is more of a byproduct, because I have a theory for Sunbreak that I am so confident in, I'd put money on it. Monster Hunter Rise is the base game for Sunbreak, right? And every new monster in Monster Hunter Rise was a bit special, weren't they? No, I don't mean that they were great monsters, though they are all great monsters, but in Rise, every single new monster is at least somewhat based off a yokai, which are essentially supernatural entities, spirits with either the capability of causing great mischief, pain, or even some being helpful to humans. Essentially, yokai are firmly rooted in Japanese mythology and folklore, and the comparisons are very, very easy to make to the monsters that we've gotten, and we've all talked about those in the past specifically, so let's instead talk about what that means for Sunbreak. Sunbreak clearly has a castle in the first bit that we've seen of the game, and most of us are taking this as a confirmation that the expansion is going to have a very medieval European knightly aesthetic going on everywhere, especially combined with all the hints from Rondine herself in Rise, and also all of the information from your secret wallcat Fukushigi. I won't say that I told you so, but it sort of seems almost definite now, doesn't it? So, to recap, Rise monsters were all yokai. Rise was also created with a very Japanese theme and aesthetic in mind. Folklore all around the place. Sunbreak, medieval European theme and aesthetic. With that, there are 3 logical conclusions. 1. We're going back to normal. Monsters with super varied inspirations, not necessarily a theme to tie them together. 2. The new set of monsters is still inspired by yokai, because there's plenty more yokai to draw from, and maybe that's just what they want to do with Rise's entire life cycle. Or 3, my personal favorite, and I think probably the most likely, every monster in Sunbreak, every new monster, will be based on a European mythological figure or cryptid. While you're chewing on that thought, have another look at the only monster we've been introduced to so far. The community as a whole seems to be taking a liking to calling him Vampkana for now, implying that he looks sort of like if Velkhana was a vampire. Vampire. Where have I heard that word before? Oh right, Eastern European folklore. Not that vampires are uncommon by any means, but this could be a coincidence. I just really don't think so. It seems too perfect, doesn't it? Rise, Japanese theme, Japanese mythological based creatures. Sunbreak, European theme, European mythological based monsters. With that in mind, I am gonna take a few guesses, stabs in the dark, even just suggestions of creatures that I know from that type of folklore and mythology that we could definitely see translated into some sort of Monster Hunter monster in the series. In no particular order, starting with the werewolf. This one's easy, right? Vampires and werewolves are a classic pairing. Well, at least in the modern age we treat them that way. Thanks, Twilight.
No problem.
I don't even feel the need to explain this one all that much. If a vampire monster is a thing, and we are going for that kind of theme too, then a werewolf monster seems almost a given. As for how to represent a werewolf, you could go the easy way of a fanged beast, start off small and quick, but then enrage into a much bigger, slower, more powerful creature. I could definitely see that being a thing. Or even something like a fanged beast that turns into a fanged wyvern to walk on all fours. I know that's asking a lot, but it could be a thing, right? Or, well, what if in Sunbreak we just get a Gos Harag subspecies that is based on werewolves? That seems crazy, right? The Banshee. This is a spirit from Irish folklore, most well known for its sonic screech. Obviously, that's just a representation. Banshees aren't real. Calm down. A traditional part of mourning in Ireland, not the mourning is in the time, but mourning is in the verb, the action, is the keening woman, who is essentially someone who comes in to weep and cry and wail out a lament at a funeral. Sometimes a family member, sometimes a professional would be brought in. This is where the story of the Banshee was born. The Banshee is a spirit who performs this process a little bit in advance. The Banshee's wail, the screech that I played an example of earlier, signifies the death of your loved one. The worst part is that it often came before they were dead, or if they were far away and had died, it would happen before the news would reach you that they were dead. Banshees were thus known as predictors of death. I love the way that this sounds as a potential monster idea, especially because that is very easily translated by doing a sonic screech roar, flinching the player before doing a super powerful attack that follows up and could kill them. Essentially, mechanically working in that sound as a predictor of death, so to say. They are most often represented as younger women with long hair, dark clothes, and red eyes from endless crying. Now, when I was going through some concepts of what I thought would fit, this I had to stop at the Banshee. It feels like it's just begging to be a monster, right? It just seems so fitting, but also it does seem a little bit close in concept to something that we already have as a new monster in Rise, doesn't it? I don't want to give it away because I bet we'll have a video about this real soon too, but let's just say if a Banshee comes, I think it would most likely be a subspecies of an existing creature rather than a fully new one, and we've got a bit more of a theory on that in the works. From this point though, I'll get into a little bit less of the nitty gritty, but Banshees are just something that I really wanted to stop on and dig into the background of for a moment. Fenrir of Norse mythology, the son of Loki the trickster god and the giantess Angerboda, Fenrir was a gigantic wolf, believed so powerful that he could bring upon the end of the world. Prophesized to eat the sun one day, yes, the fucking sun. The only way that the gods felt they could stop him was to chain him up until Ragnarok, which is the equivalent of asking your parents for a toy and them saying that you'll get it when pigs fly. It was a permanent imprisonment until literal doomsday. Not that it is important in Monster Hunter terms, it's just really cool backstory for the wolf. This one is almost always just seen as an impossibly large wolf, and thus it doesn't really have a massive amount of things that I can say, whoa, that would be awesome in Monster Hunter combat. But if we are talking European myths, then this guy is very much on the table. The Basilisk. This one is interesting for a very large number of reasons. Early representations of the Basilisk are all as a gigantic snake, the king of the serpents. In ancient myths, this was pretty much all it was. But as time went on, this myth evolved. It changes, as folklore often does. There are versions of this story where it is instead an incredibly small snake with an unbelievably potent venom that it leaves behind as it slithers on the floor. There are even four-legged depictions of this where both the head and tail are snakes. And as time goes on, somewhere around the 12th century, this giant badass snake myth got a bit mixed up with the cockatrice legend, a giant dragon rooster hybrid that has the ability to kill people by simply looking them in the eye, turning them to stone. At one point, Basilisk even became a synonym for cockatrice, as it now can just also be used to refer to the weird rooster dragon. In other words, I love snakes. I love snake monsters in Monster Hunter, and the Basilisk, if adapted to the series, sort of has a lot of room to play around with for the developers. You could go with just the big snake, you could go with the little snake, you could include the venom, or you could drop it entirely. You could include the deathly petrifying stare, or drop it entirely. You could even just have it be the rooster dragon and call it a basilisk. Hell, there even is a modern day creature called the common basilisk that is not only incredibly cute, but is also known as the Jesus Christ lizard because it can walk on water. So who's to say really what Capcom could choose to adapt into this creature if they want to make a basilisk-based monster? Now to rapid fire some of the more notable examples, there are also the Dame Blanche, French folklore spirits dressed in white who would murder anyone who refused to dance with them, which seems like a wonderful monster hunting idea to me. The Kelpie, a water spirit from Scottish folklore, which is essentially a shape-shifting horse that swims. Now, I don't know if we are quite at the point in Monster Hunter for shape-shifting, but if a monster could straight up change skeletons mid-fight, that would be super neat to me. The Alp from German folklore were most notable for wearing hats, like always wearing a hat. Oh, and also they attacked people through nightmares. Essentially, in the modern day, we understand the Alp as an old attempt at explaining things like sleep paralysis, which definitely seems like something that could be adapted into a monster in the series. Of course, those are mostly all very old mythological creatures, and while there is reference to vampiric-type creatures back thousands and thousands of years, the more modern understanding of a vampire, especially the vampire aesthetic that we are giving to this flagship monster of Sunbreak, the vampire aesthetic that we're all noticing and calling out, it's all a very recent concept, essentially directly representing Dracula, a figure from a book published in 1897. So while it could be more general Western mythology, it may well even be more specific than that, things that are more recent, things like classic horror monsters instead of mythology specifically, of which the vampire absolutely is one. If it does go down that route instead, werewolves are still absolutely on the table, but then we have the question of something like a zombie. Of course, we have had various creatures in the past that have played with the concept and idea of undeath or hiding under the skin of an otherwise dead monster, but none that have actually truly been undead. I doubt we will actually get that, but maybe we'll get Gore Magalla back or something, you know? With that, there is also much more general concepts, things like ghosts, like a movie ghost, going invisible, making the house shake, stuff like that, which especially given that we got Chameleos in the updates for Rise, a new invisible monster in the expansion is absolutely possible to me. And I guess technically you could even go Frankenstein's monster, which of course is based on a zombie, but functions quite a bit differently, being stitched together, made of parts from multiple different bodies. I could absolutely believe that a strange, nightmarish monster made of bits and pieces from other monsters would exist in this realm. It's not impossible at all. Finally, it's worth noting that this was all a very, very general look, an overview. I don't know quite what to lock down into yet, what to specify towards, as far as if this game will be sticking to a single era of folklore, as the more modern version of vampires is a very recent concept, which I already said, in which case we may only be sticking to the more modern folklore. Personally, I love the idea of some of those proper ancient myth creatures that I talked about there, and many more, but if they are trying to stick to a theme, it could well be a more specific theme than just European folklore and mythology that I've lined out today. That said, the main point of this is all to say, I think this is the general genre of monster that we should probably expect from Sunbreak. I am almost certain that this is the path we're going to take. It feels way too perfect for base Rise to be full of yokai and Sunbreak to be full of these. And while I could be proven to be totally, completely wrong in a week or two, the pieces of this puzzle just fit together way too well right now for me to ignore. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been essentially me just trying to quell my own overflowing excitement for this expansion by letting it all out and capturing it in audio format. Honestly, I'm surprised this isn't just 15 minutes of unintelligible screeching. Do you agree with me that this is the likely monster theme for Sunbreak, or am I grasping at straws? Do you like the idea of adapting any of the folklore creatures that I specifically mentioned today as monsters? Are there any other of these types of legends that you could see translated as a monster for Sunbreak? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.